name is John McGurk, and I'm chairman of the board. The BPS is celebrating its 40th year of service to the community. Our mission is to protect and preserve historic structures, quality of life, and neighborhood character of the village of East Hampton and its surroundings. I wish to acknowledge and thank the Historic Preservation Committee Chairwoman, Georgia DeHavenon. Georgia.
Thank you.
For all her hard work in leading the committee and applying its standards to local historic restoration projects that are so vital to keeping our ties to the past. I also wish to thank and acknowledge Deputy Supervisor Kathleen Burke Gonzalez, who is here with us today and is instrumental in providing our meeting space here at Town Hall. Thank you, Deputy, and thank you for all joining us.
Good morning, everybody. I just want to acknowledge Councilwoman Kate Rogers also joining us today. It's nice to have our elected officials here. Thank you for coming. I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who is Sarah Kautz, who's the Executive Director of Preservation Long Island, an organization that serves communities in Brooklyn, Queens, Nassau, and Suffolk counties, working to preserve the cultural and agricultural heritage of the region through advocacy, education, and stewardship of historic sites and collections. It's a lot of work. Collections is a lot of work. She attended the University of South Carolina and the University of Chicago, and has organized Preservation Long Island's Endangered Historic Places and Preservation Awards program, and in 2017 founded the blog Preservation Long Island, Everything Worth Celebrating. In 2019, she received the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation Award for work helping to document, preserve, and protect the historic African American communities of Sag Harbor Hills, Azurist, and Nineveh here on the East End. Additional information about Sarah can be found in the program. We're most grateful to her for coming from Lloyd Harbor to speak with us today about such a timely topic. So, Sarah, please welcome Sarah.
It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Could I have the first?
Oh, yes, more.
We just heard a little bit about my organization, Preservation Long Island. We were founded in 1948, so we've been around for a while. And you probably know us by our old name, which is LEA, the Society for the Preservation of Long Island Antiquities. And I think that kind of explains why we changed it to the shorter Preservation Long Island. One thing I just wanted to mention is our organization is very unique because we do advocacy and museum work. So we have 4 historic properties that we own and operate for the public. So we have skin in the game, so to speak. So when I go out in the world, speaking with people who have historic buildings, we are deeply aware of what it takes to manage, maintain, fund, all these kinds of things. And our 3 focuses are advocacy, education, and stewardship. So that's at the core of our mission. And advocacy is one of my main work in service of the mission. And I just want to mention, we are not a regulatory agency. A lot of folks call us thinking, we have some sort of regulatory power over decisions with demolitions, etc. We do not. We are a private nonprofit, so we can help, of course, and many of you I've worked with over the years, but we are not in and of ourselves a regulatory agency. So I want to start by, I think in the last couple of years it's been a good time to go back to basics and think about, why do we do things? Why do we do historic preservation? Why does it matter? Why are you all here today? Why does historic preservation matter? It can be really easy to lose track of things in the what and how, and get very deep in the weeds of doing historic research and archives, or looking at particular building styles and colors and all of this stuff, which is all fascinating, but you can really quickly lose track of, why are we doing this? Why is it worth all this time? So one thing I wanted to talk about is place. So at the base foundational level, historic preservation is all about places that matter for all kinds of different reasons. So why do places matter? How do we make places matter? Historic preservation is one of those ways. And this, I don't know if you're familiar with This Place Matters, is a program that the National Trust for Historic Preservation operates. It's, there's these little, like bubble things that you can print out, or you can just get one of these guys and you tag it. So you take a picture and you tag it, and it goes onto their national social media. It's really cool, very fun. And one thing I wanted one reason why I thought this image is very, very important, and it's something that Preservation Long Island struggles with when we do our biennials and all of our photos. What do you notice about all of these photos? What's people? Yes, people. People make places matter. We make them matter. They matter because they matter to us in any number of ways. And once we lose track of that, then we really lose track of why we do historic preservation. So always remember people. Even though the buildings are beautiful or the spaces are beautiful, it's gotta be meaningful to people. And I love the This Place Matters program because you gotta be in the picture with the place, right? So keep that in mind as we go through how we got to landmark laws or preservation ordinances. So that's one way we made places matter in a very legal and regulatory sense. But again, it's coming from this place of places matter. People make places matter, and this was an important way we did it. So, does everybody recognize this fabulous structure? This is Penn Station, and if you just hit once, so that's Penn Station too. And this is a place that mattered because it was a galvaning rod for not just our region, not just New York City, but the entire country, and some might say the world, that we needed to do something more than just come out and visit places and think about places and give them meaning. We had to protect them actively. And the loss of Penn Station was a major turning point in creating laws, so actual regulatory laws that would protect places in a really explicit way. And I think it's always important to go back to this moment of Penn Station and the loss of Penn Station. And at that point, there was nothing we could do about it. There was no landmark ordinance in New York City. There is now, but there wasn't then. And that was a major reason why. So when you think about landmarking and places that have it and places that don't, it's usually, especially in this region, because of what happened to Penn Station. So just keep that in mind the next time. I don't know, maybe some of you have a house that's landmarked and you have to go before your board of review, and it's very aggravating maybe, and it takes some time, but it's worth it because of this. So it seems very distant and remote, but again, it's always at the core of why historic preservation matters. Another reason why historic preservation matters is because character. So it's something we think about a lot on Long Island, but don't really, it's very difficult to pinpoint what we're talking about when we talk about quality of life, character. What does that mean? Usually you know it when you see it. This is a great example I found online somewhere. It was one of these, whoa. So one of the most important things about historic preservation, especially in a historic district, is managing the character, the scale, the design of new construction, alterations, new changes, new construction. So in a historic district, something like this would not happen, right? That's the reason why we have historic preservation ordinances. So one reason is to protect important places like Penn Station from being demolished. Another reason is this protecting the character, the sense of place. And it's more than just a NIMBY kind of idea, I don't want that thing. But look at the building next to it, that cute little vernacular Queen Anne. What was next door was something like that. And so when this happens, it really detracts from that older sense of place, what has been there, what this place is all about. And it really changes the story in ways we might not want to see. And historic preservation laws and regulation is one way that we can prevent this from happening. Next slide. Another thing is property value. I hear so much about if my property is landmarked, it's going to go down in value. That is not true, not true, not true, not true. It's not true. It is not true. It is just not true. And I want to show you the numbers. If anybody wants to see numbers, I have numbers. There has been many, many, many studies done across the United States. Cities, rural communities, towns, villages, everywhere. Every single one shows that landmarked properties, especially in a historic district, retain value at a stable rate and gradually increase at a stable rate that is appreciably larger than outside a historic district. This is a study that was just done a couple of years ago in Saratoga Springs, New York, so that's just upstate. Some of you probably have visited there over the years. Fabulous place. They have landmark ordinance. The bottom dotted line is outside historic district. The top dashed line is inside the historic district. So that's from 1997 up until like 2018. So that gap is how much more the historic district retains its value and grows in value over time. And you can see it never dips. It goes constantly up. And do you see like kind of midway there, it sort of takes a higher shoot and it kind of pulls away from that bottom line? You know what happened? What happened in the middle? The Great Recession. So actually, the market favored landmark properties after the Great Recession, and this is also the case in New York City. There's been studies done. I don't have that data to show you today, but buildings and properties in historic districts in New York City retain their value in appreciably higher rates than outside the historic districts before and after the Great Recession. Next slide, please. So this is the data I do have for New York City. This is a little bit old, but it's basically 1975 to 2001. Just so, you know, because some folks say, well, New York City is like its own kind of crazy thing. The same pattern works there. So you can see the top line is in a historic district, bottom line is not. So again, the data bears it out. Over the long term, historic preservation protects property value, enhances property value, stabilizes property value in ways that not having it does not. So that's another reason why historic preservation matters. Please. So to go back to our Penn Station moment, what was going on Long Island when we got our landmark laws? Because it wasn't too much long after Penn Station. 1966, I believe, New York City's landmark ordinance goes into effect. A lot of places on Long Island started passing landmark ordinances as early as the 70s. I know the town of East Hampton's is like 1990, so it's a little bit later. The village might be earlier, just because it's a smaller, more manageable thing to pass in a village than a town. But what's going on in the 60s? Out here, that would make people want to have a landmark ordinance.
No.
Yeah, so does anybody want to guess what this picture is?
Long Island LIE, yes, yes, thank you, sir. This is the LIE, this is 1958. It's not Robert Moses. These are, there's some guys in New York State Public Works. But this is near Lake Success, and you can see it's quite the undertaking. And as the LIE comes through from the 60s on up all the way, and some might even say today, that impact is really felt. So places all across Long Island, especially closer to the LIE, are being deeply transformed by major infrastructure projects, just like New York City. And part of that is urban renewal. So along with the roads come the railroad updates, the housing updates. And could we go to the next slide? This is an aerial of Huntington Station. So back to my neck of the woods. I thought about trying to find one from the East End, but I thought this is so powerful, the impact of urban renewal on Long Island communities. This is 1948, I believe. This was a community along New York Avenue for anybody who's familiar with the area. This is right around the Huntington Station area, and the LIE station is sort of where Kathy's standing in that bottom corner. And that big road that goes straight up and down, that's New York Avenue, that's 110. So there was an extremely vibrant, very diverse community of people of color, white people, and back then we had, you know, newer immigrants, Italian, Irish, you know, Catholic, but also the African American community was very, very much based along this area. And just an extremely vibrant place of shops, businesses, homes. So this got really targeted in my urban renewal, and there's a lot to say, but what we want to focus on is this was a mature, vibrant community, and the point of urban renewal was this was not that kind of community, and we had to do something to make it that. So you can see what happens if you just tap it. This is 1972, boom. So that's a big change, right? Urban renewal in the 1960s wiped Huntington Station off the map. That community was completely erased. And everything, all the places that made that place Huntington Station. And to this day, there are people who were displaced by that project that still remember and feel. I don't know if anybody here knows somebody, or maybe you lived there yourself. It was a tremendous, tremendous issue. And part of the reason why we have landmark ordinances in places like Huntington is because of things like this, that we needed to do something. We needed to have a method to make better decisions and protect places that matter, like Huntington Station. This is another shot of Huntington Station. This is, again, like 1940s, the intersection right by the station. So you can see a bank, you can see all these shops. And then today. So with preservation laws and regulation comes better decision making. And one would hope that the outcome would be much different if that happened today. So out of all of that post-war urbanization, demolition, the LIE, came a big push on Long Island to pass landmark ordinances, and out of that, about a third of our 110 municipalities in Nassau and Suffolk County passed a landmark ordinance. So is your community one? Do you know? Is your local government one of these that has passed one? I receive so many calls about that question. What do I do? Like, do I have a landmark law? Some people think they do, some people think they don't. Before I created this database. This is Preservation Long Island's local landmark law locator. You can look it up on our website. It's a map-based interface where you can put in an address or you can scroll around and zoom in, zoom out. And it's all based around 3 questions. Does this municipality have a landmark ordinance? So right now we're looking at the village of East Hampton. The answer is yes. And I don't know if you can see, but the next one is, I think it's, okay. So if the answer is yes, the next question is, what is it? What are my ordinance laws? And there's a hot link there that'll take you right to the code, directly into the code, so you could read it yourself. And then the next question I often get from folks who are interested in this is, well, who do I talk to about this? And the next one is a link to your local board of review, or maybe your planning department, whoever's the one who would administrate that part of your ordinance. I have a link directly to that, and you can get in touch with those folks. So I thought this might be a little interesting exercise. We have 2 towns and 8 incorporated villages in Southampton and East Hampton. So that's 10 municipalities in just those 2. Sure. So just kind of think how many you got. Sag Harbor is in between both towns, so that's why it's kind of stuck there. So how many of these 10 have landmark ordinances? Eight. West Hampton Beach does not, and West Hampton Dunes does not. And those are newer municipalities, so it makes sense. But all the rest do, even the towns. However, not all landmark ordinances are created equal. And I get a lot of questions, who does it well, who does it right? And it's kind of a complicated question because part of it is your ordinance, how it's written, what it says, what the procedures are, what's protected, what's not. That's very particular to a municipality because every municipality is different. It wouldn't make a lot of sense to have New York City's ordinance in the village of East Hampton, right? You have no skyscrapers or anything like that. So in many ways, your ordinance is supposed to be speaking to the needs and the character you have right now. And a good way to measure is, how is it working? Is it doing a good job? Do you think the outcomes are good? And if the outcomes aren't good, it could be the code that needs to be adjusted. A lot of the codes haven't been adjusted since they were first adopted almost 50 years ago in some cases. So it's time to update, that's okay. You know, time to change. We can change our codes, that's okay. And we should. But the other thing is practice. So is it being administered well? Do the folks who work in your municipality and who sit on your boards as volunteers, and I know there's a lot of you here today, thank you for your service. They are, a lot of your ARB folks, the Architectural Review Board, your landmark board, they're volunteering. They're not getting paid to do that work. So, oh, some of you do. Some do, some don't. Some do, some don't. Some are completely volunteers. In the town, yeah. But a lot of the villages, no. So, you know, it's hard to say who does it well. It's, I think, more important to look at your community and see, do you think your community is doing a good job? And if not, try to find out why. And one great thing to do is contact your elected officials and say, this stuff matters to you. So again, historic preservation matters. This place matters, and we want to invest in it. And sometimes that can just make a big difference, that elected officials know that the community really cares about that policy and that they should be investing in resources and tools to make sure it works well. Okay. So here's just a little image of some boards in action. And I want to focus again on every code is different. Every community is unique, right? It has its own character, its own history, its own stories. The way things work in different places are different. So the East Hampton town is different than the village. Same in Southampton town versus village. Sag Harbor is different. So it's so important to, if you're interested in this work, to get in touch with those folks. Find out who they are. Go to meetings. These are public meetings. You can attend them. If you can go in person, that's great, but a lot of them you can, I know out here you have LTV, you can watch on your TV, but you can Zoom in sometimes now. A lot of boards have Zoom. One of the better things that came out of COVID was you can attend a lot of municipal meetings remotely. That's fabulous. So if you're interested in this, if you're concerned, the best thing you can do is just show up to these meetings. And people will start to realize, oh, this matters. This place matters. Historic preservation matters. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for inviting me.
You had a question?
Sarah had a question for you.
Would you just repeat the question?
A friend of mine, who shall remain nameless, referred me to a code section in a whole other municipality that dealt with demolition delay reviews, which I thought was really interesting. Can you talk about if you're seeing, and was it in New York State or Long Island, are you seeing any of that type of code provisions proliferating at all, and what's your experience with them, and do you recommend something like that?
There are not many demolition review provisions for Long Island communities. I don't know of any, actually. However, it doesn't mean that it can't work. So one thing about ordinances that's kind of funny is you can enforce them to the letter. So, you can figure out, does this, is this something that must go through this review? And sort of, get really fussy about, oh, well, it doesn't, it's exempt. Or we could be more kind of robust and just give everything the benefit of the doubt, because the process is there to make the outcome better. So to be more broad in the application of code. So in many instances, if there is an ordinance that has a landmark provision, there is a way to interpret the power of the board to review something like a demolition permit. And one of the purviews of every single landmark ordinance or ARB or whatever the board is that does that work for that community, they can recommend designations or they can designate themselves. And that's the mechanism, is, hey, this thing, it's actually significant and we should really landmark it. So that's one way. But demolition reviews can be a way to sort of create time which sort of benefits, it kind of abates that really rapid market turnover. So there's a lot of speculation on Long Island real estate right now for the past couple of years. And it's not necessarily geared at, we want to have a vibrant community long-term for the next 2-3 generations. It's about, I want to get in, I want to get out, I want to make the most, I want to flip it. That's a very different market. So demolition review can slow that down and really deter speculation in that sort of negative way. And I'm not saying speculation is necessarily like bad across the board. There are places where, that makes sense. But I don't think it makes sense in a place that has a landmark ordinance, because you're giving the mixed signal of, do we want long-term, multi-generational stability and character retention, something like a landmark or a demolition review could do that. So just kind of like beef up powers that theoretically the municipality already has. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. I haven't seen any pass it yet. There might be some upstate, perhaps, or in other states.
We all, in this community, preservation started, you know, 50s, 60s. People doing a huge amount of work, putting the historical record together, putting lists of buildings, saving buildings, moving buildings. It was a very old place. And then there was a huge amount of work done in the last, I guess, 40 years where districts were, you know, state and national register districts were put